first ever blue ocean outsourcing company in Vietnam in 2004, working with multiple startups and being their extended engineering team back out in Vietnam. Was part of actually Coupa's early stage team, having a successful IPO in 2016, and INSEAD alumni, having been part of Coupa and being part of Better Cloud's exit. I had an opportunity to either continue being an operator or like work with invest as an investor, working with amazing founders for you all. So Foster Ventures is focused on B2B early stage investments. And we do also like focus on Indian origin founders with a thorough focus on B2B enterprise. And over here to share any little I know, and looking forward to using 2 years in one mouth to learn more from you both too.
Thanks, Priya. Hi, folks. Myself, Nishit. As a way of introduction, early days went to IIT Delhi, then I'm Bangalore. Life started at Flipkart. So very early days in Flipkart. Spent a lot of years there, 8+. Then a couple of years in between with Tiger Global and with RTP Global for last 2.5 years. At RTP, we are early stage, like stages early late are have gone for a toss in the last few years, but anywhere from seed to early B is what we do, sector agnostic, generally SaaS, AI, consumer, fintech, anything that we can understand that we do. So yeah, that's very briefly about me. Over to you, Karan.
And sorry for making that late entrance. I was just busy getting a filter coffee. Again, thank you guys for having me. My name is Karan Mola. I'm with B Capital. I help lead our investments across Asia. So I'll maybe talk about B Capital first. We have two primary strategies. The one is early stage venture, which is seed through early B, same as what RTP does. And then we have a growth fund, which does B onwards through typically pre-IPO. We're global, so all our funds invest across North America, India, and Southeast Asia. About 40% of our capital is deployed in between India and Southeast Asia, India obviously being the much larger part of it. And our areas of focus include cross-border and enterprise SaaS, enterprise B2B, fintech, healthcare, and climate. We invest across both B2B and B2C. And being global, I think, allows us to, help work with founders that are also looking to expand beyond their home countries. As far as my background, I've been in venture for about 15 years, 12 years with IDG Ventures, and then as that transitioned over to Chiratis, was there from Fund 1, and then joined B Capital about 3 years ago as we were setting up our first venture fund. So again, thank you guys for having me. Looking forward to a good conversation.
Well, thank you for that. Today's session, by the way, guys, I'm Deepa. I am moderating this session because I'm a marketing executive. And I think I'm the right fit because I've been on both sides of the world, because I've been with an operator with LinkedIn and IBM, and then I have been with Bessemer for about 1.25 years. So I kind of fit right in, right? So what we've decided to focus on today was what can founders expect from VCs, but also what can VCs expect from founders. So now you have a general sense of what they look for or what they're focusing on in their investment strategies. But also I'd love to understand from all three of you, what do you look for in a founder when you're talking to them?
So I think it somewhat depends on, so there is a lot of the usual stuff that I think most funds, most investors will look for. And then there are things which are very specific to either what that fund is focusing on or what they are not wanting to focus on. So I think both parts play an important role. I think for us, and I'll keep this maybe more specific to India and opportunities coming out of India and the US, I think what you look for is somewhat similar, but somewhat very different also. And what struck me the most is in the 3 years that I've been here now at B Capital, the number of repeat serial founders you don't come across once in a while. You see them pretty much every week. And that's just part and parcel of being an old ecosystem that's been much older. But I think if you keep it to India, I still think, look, over time, markets win, but founders have to endure, right? So I think that's the paradigm with which at least I try and operate. What that means is, yes, it's a very founder-first focused approach. So you're looking for founders who will, there's many characteristics which I've seen that founders need. whether it's resilience, whether it's empathy. But I think it's the will to survive and the will to, just endure, which to me supersedes everything else. So anybody who's willing to run through walls, not for investors, but for themselves, for the company. And it's a very, you don't find that over a Zoom call. You don't find that by having one or two conversations. You really have to get to know the person deep. And I think because of the market that we operate in, where it's evolving quickly, things do change, whether it's macro or micro, you want founders that will understand both elements of it and be able to balance their approach and lead in the right way, sorry. So I think those are some of the elements which I think most VCs will look for. I think for us, because while we do businesses which are local in the US, local in India, we really do like businesses where we can add more value, and we'll talk more about that, where they want to expand outside of their home country. And so that global mindset or that expansion mindset is important. Doesn't have to be that in every case. Not all founders want that either. But I think that's one added element which we've seen that works well for us, because then actually that is one element of a founder VC fit that we've seen work well over the last few years.
That's useful. Nishit, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I think as Karan mentioned, a lot of things are very horizontal that most VCs look for. Similarly, resilience is something that is super critical, because no journey is always a smooth line. It will always be with ups and downs. So that's something that you really want to make sure. And has the founder had generally faced or has had life experiences which have made them ready for things like that, because there's going to be long journeys. Second thing, at our fund, we're again a truly global fund. We really look for is the ambition big enough, and is it coming out of a deep inspiration or a deep problem set, or is it just a casual need to be your own boss or something like that? And that's also perfectly fine. It's just that it's the fit of the fund, that's what we're talking about, could be very, very different depending on how a founder is approaching a problem. So for us, we really look for people who really are inspired by a problem statement and have an ambition to make it big, because that's where the resilience also ties up to follow through that. So yeah, that's what I would summarize on mine.
Grit and perseverance is a key thing, right? And being a cockroach, that's the statement that we say, because cockroaches always survive, even the worst of the earthquakes ever. And that's very important. But one of the other things as a founder that's needed is also adapting to change, right? And especially since we focus in Foster Ventures in B2B enterprise, when someone is building a product for a company like Unilever or P&G, which is going to be live in 100 plus countries, it's about the product which needs to be built not for one country, but which can be applicable to 100 plus countries with different local institutions, laws and compliances and things like that. So for that, one of the most important things that we look for in founders is, hey, how well do you know the problem statement? How well are you ready to be actually adapting to the changes within the company too? Because what you might be putting together for North America, even within North America for USA, might not work in the enterprise world in Canada. So right from the changes and the thinking for developing a global product, it requires a lot of adaptive changes in self, not working in just that one angle perspective, right? And it also works very well when they look at selling from one country to another country too. It's way different getting those customers. So understanding the different culture, which is important. Both Karan and I went to INSEAD, and so I can proudly say Culture Map is one of the best books that I always recommend to every one of the founders, because when you sell in India, it's way different from how you sell even in Indonesia, right? So how do you look at developing a product, not just from today, but about scaling and selling to different countries, different cultures, different compliances, institutions, which is very important too, 2 cents.
That's interesting. So I heard grit, determination, perseverance, problem set, and also repeat founders. So, Karan, I'm going to ask you this next question. How much of importance would you give a repeat founder over a really amazing vision? And to the two of you, does vision factor at all? Does a founder need to be a good storyteller?
Even if it's going to be a repeat founder, vision is needed. It's not either or, it's a both, right? Whether it's a first time founder or a repeat founder, vision is something which is very much needed for anyone to be having all the other things that we spoke about. And it's just not the founder's vision, right? As Karan rightfully mentioned already, the whole thing is about like finding the right fit between the founders and the investors. Is your vision aligning with the investor's vision or the fund's vision, right? Or else it might not be the right fit for each other, right? And
Yep.
so that is the key thing. But with respect to repeat founders, again, it's all, I've got two kids, I mentioned this in the morning, both of them are like very different, same set of parents, right? But the whole concept is both of them are completely different. Even if it's going to be a repeat founder, it can be a different product, different industry that they are selling into, different bunch of founding team that they will have. It's going to be different. But the maturity is an angle which is going to be way different. They might have done a lot of mistakes in the past, which they will be like focusing on not repeating and things like that. And they are going to be like more focused on how to adapt for those changes. What did I miss out the previous time and things like that, right? And so for me, vision and repeat founders is a together combination. I would love to hear what they would think.
Yeah, I think vision is a no-brainer. Like it has to be there. Without that, it's generally very difficult to build something big because there will be a lot of distractions on during the journey. There will be a lot of ups and downs, and vision is the only one that can actually help the not exactly as we mentioned, both the founders and the VC, the entire boardroom or the entire team together course correct. I think that's super critical. So vision is like very very important. It's a without it it is not possible. Is that what I believe? And repeats again. Repeat gives you that perspective. Right? There are, she said, you won't make the same mistakes. You are sharper on how do you approach things. Yeah, so that just helps in managing the rough patches along the journey. So that's why there at times is a preference for repeat founders. Yeah.
Understood. Putting you on the spot there, Karan.
No. I think it's a great question, and it's very topical because and I think it's best illustrated through examples. So I can share a few. Maybe I'll give one which I can't maybe share the name of the founder, but we were in conversations with a very successful second time founder recently, and he's building in a market which on the face of it is fairly crowded. But we really liked his approach, and this is sort of pre-product, right? So you have to go with what he and his team are trying to build. But we loved how he thought about the problem and why he felt there was still a white space, how he would attack it. And so you want to back someone like that against all odds. It helps that they're a second-time founder, so they don't make the same mistake; they make new mistakes. But that's what you want to try and do. Now, the watch out for over there, I've always seen is, I think, two things. One, if you're trying to build a second time in a completely different area, so you may have the muscle memory of how to build, but if you're not leveraging what you've done, at least some 50, 60, 70%, but the overlap is like 15, 20%, then really why should you win versus someone else? Just because you're a second time founder, right? So the vision then becomes very tied to what you're also building. And then the second part is, look, I think it's not easy to be a founder. I think it's one of the hardest jobs in the world. So when you have success, you must feel good about it. From time to time, it does take you in a different direction. And I think the founders who are humble, who keep their feet on the ground, who understand what they're doing, they focus on building something, meaningful, even if they're doing it the second, third time. I mean, those are the people I have the utmost respect for because they've accomplished it time and time again. I'll give a quick example. In this case, I can name it, even though it's not in B2B SaaS. It's a founder who I had backed 12 years ago, 13 years ago. He was a second-time founder back then. He started a company in India called First Cry, which went public. So imagine 2011 to find a repeat founder who successfully sold a company. He's he's the same guy I met 12 years ago, right? I mean, it's just amazing when you look at people like that. So I think it's the vision, but it's equally important how you manifest what you've already done into what you want to do, and how you think about life as a new journey, but you use what you've done to your advantage. It's a very tough act to actually do. When you find people like that, put everything behind them because you know they will succeed. Those guys are not born winners necessarily, but they're winners. So you want to be able to work with people like that.
That's useful. I know we've been asking the VC perspective, but now we're going to flip the side and figure out what can founders expect from VCs. So I'm sure you have initiatives coming up, or you've done a lot of things anyways. Like you mentioned, you're already helping a lot of your portfolio companies go outside India. I'd love to hear from all of you. Like, how do you think about how you can give back? I mean, not just the money, but how are the other ways you can support founders?
Yeah, probably. So I think the the VC ecosystem has also matured a lot in the last 10, 15 years globally and in India. The good part is, uh, there have been a lot of successful founders in the ecosystem. So there are some playbooks that people have seen. There are some identifications of areas which are probably not core but are required during the building phase. Could be supports in terms of structuring your companies in the right way for multi-geography businesses. How do you look at hiring talent, figuring out how to set up ESOP policies, performance frameworks? How do you think about growth early, digitally, then later? How do you set up? When do you move from PLG motions to inside sales and all of those things? And so, and a lot of funds have probably looped in experts, advisors, either in their teams or have a network that founders probably can reach out to. The most important thing for founders, but in this sense, is to really identify what they need help with. A lot of times, all of us, like me and Priya were discussing earlier today, that as a fund manager, our jobs are also sales jobs. We keep on selling to founders most of the time. But founders also need to really internalize and figure out what do I really need at this point of time. And if a fund has to offer a menu of say 5, 7, 8 things, what are those 1 or 2 things that they can really help with? And I think if that expectation gets set well between the founders and the VCs, it becomes a lot more proactive. Otherwise, there are obvious unproductive times of, VC funds would come with, oh, I have this much help to offer. Founders can't say no to some of them because there's an obligation, there's a time gets wasted. So setting up expectations right there, what do you really need help with, is something that's very important. And then, as I said, like we also have as a fund, we have people, Babu, who was a speaker in the morning, helps companies on the HR side. There is someone who helps companies on how do you structure your companies in US, in Singapore, in Dubai, all of those. But you really need to understand where you really can leverage them and just move on.
As he already mentioned, right, it's about what you need. Every one of us will be happy to support based on what your needs are. But if you're going to think about different things, we always talk about go to market or like product market fit, early stage customer introductions. But the key thing that we should be also like ready to do, especially with founders of Indian origin, replacing, moving from here to US, one of the key things that we forget about is the founder is also replacing and taking away the spouse and the children from like a very established place where they're comfortable in to a new country, new place, and things like that, right? And so I'm very honored to say whether it's like, Karan or I have done like a couple of events together in Bay Area, right? If I have got like a question with regards to Singapore as an ecosystem or as India as an ecosystem, one of the first persons I always give a call to is Dipanshu of Karan's team. He knows that, what, he won't even ask me which company I'm talking about, which founder I'm trying to support. He'll just ask us, okay, you know what is the problem? How can we support? Understanding the local culture or the problems and things like that, right? So depending upon the kind of the support that you need, even we as VCs are also like working with each other in supporting to support each other and our ecosystem overall as a community too, right? So for that particular angle, as Nishit already brought up, whether it's GTM or like moving to a new country or like actually getting your O1 visa versus the L1 visas, the advantages, disadvantages, how to do that, getting you introduced to the legal partners locally over there from the immigration perspective, or even thinking about MSAs. One of the key things that's important for each one of you as founders, besides even thinking about doing the product development, engineering, GTM, many of us do not talk about having a good MSA in place, right? Master Services Agreement. If you don't have MSAs which can help you out anonymize and use the data, you're going to be losing out on the core thing in today's world, in AI and the data world. How to be like thinking about doing things in those angle too, right? And so with those perspective, all of us have got this support system and the right kind of actually like help for you to proceed and things like that too, right? And many of you in the 0 to 1 or even 1 to 5 stages, 5 million in revenue, you might not need like a full swing CFO in your organization. But as I was talking this morning, both the legal and the finance becomes the core foundation for the company you're building. This is all the kind of things where you can make use of your own investors, pick their brains, use the offerings that they provide in understanding how you can be prepared at any time for the next level of fundraise or like a potential acquisition, or even when an enterprise customer comes, Fortune 100 customers, they would love to do like a complete audit perspective if they're gonna trust you and buy your product, right? Be prepared for those things. We are all the people, we are ready to support, and that's something that we will all work together very closely with our founders too. But be thinking differently, right? GTM is important, getting introduced to customers is important, but more than that, as I always say, what is a necessity thing, right? Whether it's MSAs, GDPR, data, legal, finance, that's where actually we as investors can be of like great support to you all too.
I think I won't repeat them much because I think they've covered some really good points. The only point I'll make is, what a VC can offer to should offer to a founder is also very dependent on what stage the company is at and what stage the founder is at in his or her own mind. So, for instance, if you are in the early stages of starting up and you're have a small team, you're looking at raising some capital, whether you're, let's say, keep it to B2B, if you're either here or thinking of moving to the US, I mean, that's the best person to be speaking with right here, right? She will be with you thick and thin. She will be your best friend. She will also just be play devil's advocate when needed. So it's capital plus so much more. It's very hard to put what that means into words, but that's the kind of support you need. It's often hard for an institutional fund like RTP or us, and sorry if I'm speaking on your behalf on this one, but because I think our portfolios are larger, we're looking to deploy large amounts of capital, but there is the right time for the right investor, right? And so for a lot of places, that's the one thing to keep in mind. You can do a lot with, I want X number of introductions, X number of people, but what are you going to be able to do with that at that particular point in time, right? So if you, as Nishit said, if you narrow down to one or two key things at that point, so either I want a great head of product, or I want the introduction to the CRO of this company, or the CSO at that company. I mean, very specific asks, which if you really think about it, will be a handful, because it's the ad nauseum asks which actually lead to almost nothing. Ultimately, at least what we see, what we see as a VC, is that there are two things that ultimately matter, maybe three. One, the right people. Two, to be able to sell it, and three, more capital. Right. So if you can help with one or two of these, that's you will be doing a lot of work for your portfolio companies because you want to be able to do it across the portfolio. Oftentimes, I think we've all been made the mistake sometimes of trying to do a lot for everybody, and it really doesn't impact what matters, which is the bottom line, or that one really key position that you're looking to hire. So we work through it with our team. We have a very strategic partnership with BCG that helps with GTM and sales, etc. And then we have our in-house team on capital. So I think we try and solve for it that way. I think different people have different approaches, but bottom line, I think look for what is most important for you at that point in time, not what will be important 5 years from there.
Awesome. We have about 5 minutes left. So before I dive into questions, I have one last question for the three of you. And this comes from your statement, Nishit, which is a lot of time founders are in an obligation and they can't say no. So I'm sure this group here would love to know, how should they say no to a VC? I mean, one obviously is clarity of thought, but how should they be saying no to you guys?
Take them out for a drink and say no. Like, that's an easy one. But I think it starts from really, you know, when, and it's the responsibility not just of the founder. It's, I think it's the responsibility of the VC as well, that how much time do you spend early in building that relationship. It's not just a transactional relationship for a round. It's a relationship that lasts in a good way 8-10 years. It takes that much time to build companies. And if you start building that trust, and there is no way of building trust by just spending more time initially, so like at RTP we spend a lot of time initially with the founders before we get in. We really like to understand them personally beyond just the business that they're doing, and that helps in building that trust over time, so that whenever there are uncomfortable conversations, it's easier to do them. And it's not just this uncomfortable conversation about that they are under obligations. There are a lot of times, in it has been unfortunate in the last few years, there are some big cases of misrepresentations in certain cases, and there's been a lot of money, energy, and time lost for everybody. And the basis of that is just that had there been trust in some of those relationships, it's much easier to do those uncomfortable conversations that, oh, things are not going right in business, or something just bombed, we need to figure that out. The it makes a lot more easier to do those conversations, what I would say. So everybody should be upfront about it. There is, bad news is the best to be given first. I think that is the most important rule of building a good boardroom dynamics and relationships.
Oh, yeah, nobody likes surprises.
Question was how the founders can say no to us, right? And so I was one of the first ones to give a pre-seed term sheet to an amazing founder. And today, the person has already raised Series A in a span of the past 15, 16 months. And unfortunately or fortunately, two really big funds came in after the term sheet that was given by me, and I didn't have any allocation left, right? And the founder really liked me, and the founder was ready to give like a 0.5% of allocation, which does not make sense for my fund too. And so, he or she had to say no to me. It was like a really bad thing. But we decided to keep in touch because a great founder, a great actually company, great product. And so I'm surely waiting for that person to do their Series C, get their prime, the secondaries out so that they can come in as my LP, right? Now I've got like a different opportunity for me to work on. But the best news is we are still in touch, that I've done like 2 investments where the founder got me introduced to both the founders, one from Princeton and one from Stanford, right? And those 2 introductions happened through this particular founder who unfortunately had to say no to me. And we support each other in other ways too, right? And who knows, in the next company, maybe I'll be happy to write the next check too. But it's about like, feeling comfortable. For that particular founder, it was 2 amazing funds who can go on in investing until Series C stages. And both of them wanted like a 10%, at least in the, equity. And the person cannot give 5% for me too, right? At that particular stage. Even if I would have been a founder, probably I would have done the same thing, right? And so if you think that the investor is not a right fit for you at this present stage, they might be of right fit for you in the future. And so say no with respect. That's exactly what we as investors should also do to the founders too, right? When we say no, and keep on the relationship growing, because ultimately, as Nishit already said, we are all in complete sales and relationship businesses. We are going to be doing this for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So it's about keeping that relationship going, in my 2 cents.
Love that. Relationships matter.
I actually can't add anything to that. I think, look, life is long. Being in this industry is probably even longer. You don't know when things will come around, and the one thing you should try and work through is just preserve those relationships, because it's not about being useful. It's not about being transactional. Um, as an ecosystem, everything improves if that basic tenet is met. Doesn't happen all the time, to be honest, but I think there are more good intentional people out there than not. So
Love that. With that, we're opening up for questions. I'm sure you have many. We've got three wonderful partners here. Shoot, people. They're willing to hear you say no. Come on. No questions at all? You're all set. You know exactly how you can get money from them? Ask. What is your focus? What's your minimum investment? You're not going to get this chance again. All right, well, time's up. They're still around. Oh, there, we have one question. Thank you for that.
Hi guys, great session. Uh, so I don't know how to start, but Priya, maybe I can start with you since. So what's your fund's focus? I mean, when you say enterprise B2B, is it India to US, US, India, India,
Or maybe even any sector.
maybe even any sector?
And so we are a global fund, and we do investments in, we've got like 2 companies registered in India, 1 company registered in Singapore, and the rest of them are all like delivery C Corp, right? And so for us, as long as it's like a properly legally set up company, that's a good thing. And from the investment perspective, we do come in at pre-seed and seed, and the maximum check size that we've written is $1 million. And we like, even within the B2B enterprise, being with Coupa, working in the supply chain procurement, that's something I truly love. And I love anything in the vertical space, or something which is like, truly from a serial entrepreneur solving a core problem, which is like existing, towards the enterprise world. That's what I focus on.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, I mean, maybe a
But if it's
biased question.
B2C, I'm not an expert. You have to talk to Karan and Dipanshu.
So do you have a bias towards people who have been operators before and then turned founders, or?
It depends upon what problem you're solving, right? Let me give an example. I'm talking to a founder who's working on solving like a direct pricing issue for the manufacturing industry. And that is not something which a 21-year-old coming out of any part of the world can solve, because they don't know what exactly is the direct pricing or the direct spend, even from the procurement world angle and things like that, right? It depends mainly on what kind of problem you're solving. They can surely have like an engineering co-founder who's out of college, right? And so if someone is solving like a core vertical problem, at least one of the co-founders need to be a person with that operator experience or understanding the problem that they are building in.
Got it.
Right?
Well, we do have one more question here, which we can't miss.
Who's the right founder?
I thought he's going to ask what's for dinner.
Here I cook only in the US. Probably they should take.
that's the best question I've ever gotten, actually. Who's the right founder? I think, to maybe just building on what Priya said, right? So much of it depends on, if you're building, let's say, if you're building in a crowded market where there is a lot of where there are a lot of legacy players, where there are deep entrenched relationships, then if you don't come from that particular industry, I'm going to keep my eyes focused on you so you understand exactly what I'm saying. If you don't come from that industry, then it's very difficult for you to understand how to build in that vertical. That doesn't stop somebody from the outside coming in. But then what we've often seen is, what do you bring to the table as a founding team that is different from what exists? So I think having those early insights, having those early um, even sets of relationships are very critical. And then finding somebody who is willing to work with you to help build that. So on the engineering and the product side, some combination of these is the right founding team. Very rarely do you find all these in the same at the same time. If you find two or three of these that fit, then probably a good thing to maybe spend some more time into.
Yeah, makes sense. Nishit, anything to add?
Nothing to add. I think what Karan said, that's there are a lot of ingredients, and it's a right founding team versus a right founder. That is the thing. So, and if you need to realize what does a right founding team need, and just plug those gaps.
And perhaps
Yeah,
solving
yeah,
for the right problem.
yeah.
I mean, you have to answer this.
There's nothing called as a right founder or a wrong founder, in my 2 cents. And, but as Karan already said, right, it's bringing all of them together, complementing each other, right? That's the key thing which is needed, because not one single founder is going to be right in every single thing. And so it's complementing the group of co founders, which makes the founding team the right team, right? Or be the right team, is what I would say.
Awesome. With that, we're done with this session. Can we? Oh, now suddenly we have questions. We're kind of over time, but yeah, just since there are two questions, go ahead.
Hi. So when you say seed funding, right? So would it be a good idea for for the founders to approach you even before we get to product market fit? I personally have launched and scaled multiple products, and I see that it takes about 18 months, a minimum, to understand or even to get a feel to even talk to the right customer. So, I mean, as an individual right now, I'm building a product, and I haven't started approaching VCs aggressively, but I see that I'm able to attract a lot of talents, but I don't have enough funding to hire them. And I'm wondering if it would be a good idea to wait until we get the product market fit, or should we, can we approach the investors even before we get the product market fit? And the market is evolving quickly. Even I'm not sure what's going to be the next, what's going to be the next thing in the next 3 months. So, I mean, I'm in a lot of ambiguity, and I don't want to show up at the doors of an investor with a lot of ambiguity. So that's the concern that I have.
You need to start dating the VCs right before you start thinking about idea. And so, just as a good example, the first investment that I did from the fund, I, the founder, Liring. And so, I started working with him at least like 8 months before even he registered the fund, the company, right? Because it's important for both of us to know whether this is something right for me and right for you as a founder too. And there are like most of us, whether it's actually like Nishit's team or actually like, Karan's team, every one of them are basically ready to have those conversations from day zero. It's going to be like giving three things, right? Number one, you will know actually if this is the right thesis for this particular investor or not. That's the best point. First point that Karan brought up already, right? When we began the session. Number two, you're going to be like understanding and learning more about who are all the prospective competitors in the space. Is it like a crowded market space? What is happening? What is not happening? Kind of a thing. And the third thing, you're going to be knowing as to whether, come on, when an investor is deciding to invest in you, it's at least a relationship for 10 years, right? At least, I said, right? And later in other ways too. So it's important for you to be like, getting to know your founders, your investors, and we investors to getting to know you too and guiding you and channeling you and things like that. And so, in my 2 cents, you should start working with a bunch of investors, getting to know them through introductions and things like that, and start having those conversations. I would love to hear from you both.
So, yeah, I think for every stage there are investors, right? So for your stage also there are investors. So what is important is how do you either by meeting them or through references. You figure out who are the ones who would be willing to, look at companies at your stage. Right? So there are people who do stuff, just at the idea stage. Then they do pre revenue, some just PMF. So you have to find who are the ones who are relevant to your stage and reach out to them. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sorry, guys, and I'm holding you up, but like literally the last question.
Yeah, thanks. So we are an enterprise B2B SaaS space for the last 4 years, and our journey has been quite the opposite. So we are completely bootstrapped over the last 4 years, and we've been lucky to get key enterprise customers who are able to fund us, but at a slower rate than the whole investment route, right? But so for a company like us, what is the right time to switch on to ideally a Series A kind of, like what metric or what would be the right point?
I think though, it's a great question, by the way. There isn't a metric or even a set of metrics because of the journey that you have taken. But it's very interesting that especially in certain businesses, and I think B2B is definitely one of them, where you can bootstrap for a period of time and then look at what's the right time to raise funding. And just I'll give you a personal example. My brother has followed that path, right? So he has bootstrapped for about 5 years. Now he's thinking about raising, and he's very frustrated why VCs don't understand what he's done versus where he's at versus what the expectation is. And part of that comes from actually the fact that, look, you are used to running that business in a certain way because of the fact that everything is bootstrapped, right? So you have to reinvest back into growing the company. Whereas what is the basis for venture money, right? The basis is, can $1 of venture create $10 of an outcome over a period of time? That happens if you've got the right set of customers willing to buy the right product at the right price, and you can repeat that several times over and go deeper within that customer, right? For whatever reason, if that's not the case, you may not want to necessarily raise venture money, right? Because the expectation then is you are, for better or worse, you are on a treadmill from one round to the other. What I think, thankfully, there was that aberration in, let's call that dark period 2020, 2021, where everything was focused on growth. But ultimately, what really matters is how you build profitable businesses. So even by taking venture money, how do you continue to scale without not necessarily going deeply unprofitable? So some element of that framework is what at least I would look at as a potential investor to say, look, this makes sense, but then get into the details of like, why do you need to raise? What do you want to do? And are you willing to change your mindset? Because that is an important, the money's not going to change your mindset. That has to come from within. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to get off the stage, but can I have a quick round of applause for all the partners on stage and for the person with the best question, Priya Sun? Thank you.